Welcome to class, everyone. Settle down, grab your seats. Today, in our explainer, we're taking a trip back to a truly defining era of American history to explore a massive shift in our legal landscape. We're going to examine that eternal tug of war between two absolutely crucial concepts: protecting the civil liberties of the individual and ensuring public safety for the community. It's basically a giant historical pendulum swing, and you know what? It continues to shape our laws to this very day. So let's dive right in. Here is our chalkboard syllabus for today. We'll start with a welcome to history class, look at 4 landmark cases, and yes, have a pop quiz to name that case. Then we're going to cover the law and order backlash, the Burger Court shift, and finally wrap up with balancing rights and safety. All right, Section 1, welcome to history class and the legal revolution of the 1960s. Now, the 1960s and 70s were an incredibly transformative time. They placed a massive new emphasis on protecting the rights of the criminally accused. Look at how rapidly this evolved on our timeline. In less than a single decade, literally from 1961 to 1968, these 4 landmark cases completely revolutionized police procedures and court operations. I mean, it's exceptionally rare to see sweeping judicial changes happen back to back like this. It was a real game changer. Moving on to Section 2, 4 landmark cases. These are the famous Warren Court decisions. To really wrap our heads around this legal revolution, we need to look at the real people behind these cases. First up is the 1961 case of Dolly Mapp. Police searched her home without a proper warrant, and during that illegal search, they found obscene materials, which were then used to convict her in state court. Well, she pushed back. She argued that this completely violated her Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures. And the Supreme Court, they actually agreed with her. This perfectly illustrates what we call the exclusionary rule. Before Mapp, this rule only applied in federal courts, meaning state courts could just routinely use illegally obtained evidence to convict people. The Mapp decision guaranteed that state courts must adhere to the exact same Fourth Amendment protections. Simply put, if the search is unconstitutional, the evidence gets thrown right out. Next, let's fast forward to 1963. Imagine the stakes of being a poor man accused of a crime. That was the reality for Clarence Earl Gideon. He was charged with burglary, but he couldn't afford a lawyer. At the time, Florida law didn't require the state to appoint an attorney for him simply because it wasn't a capital offense. So Gideon was forced to represent himself in court, and surprise, surprise, he was convicted. But Gideon didn't give up. He appealed all the way to the top, citing his Sixth Amendment right to counsel. The Supreme Court ruled in Gideon's favor, establishing a massive precedent. Your financial situation should never strip you of your right to a fair trial. Because of this, states are now absolutely required to provide legal representation in all criminal cases for defendants who just can't afford one. Okay, then in 1966, we have the case of Ernesto Miranda. He was arrested and interrogated by police without ever being informed of his right to remain silent or his right to an attorney. He confessed, and that confession was used to convict him. The court recognized that this kind of practice easily led to coercive interrogations and false confessions, so they mandated the famous warning the police now carry on printed cards. What's really fascinating here is how this transformed everyday boots-on-the-ground police work. The ruling explicitly required that police state these rights out loud prior to any interrogation. You know the drill from pretty much every cop show on TV. If they fail to read you your Miranda rights, any confession they gather becomes entirely inadmissible in court. Finally, we reach 1968. An officer observed 3 men acting suspiciously, believing they were casing a store to rob it. Acting purely on his instincts, he stopped and frisked them and discovered they were carrying weapons. This led directly to our 4th landmark case, Terry v. Ohio. Now, unlike the previous cases that heavily restricted the police, the Supreme Court actually upheld the officer's actions here. This established the stop and frisk doctrine. It gave law enforcement the flexibility to conduct limited searches without a warrant to protect public safety. It created a new, lower standard of reasonable suspicion rather than requiring full-blown probable cause. All right, Section 3, pop quiz, name that case. It's time to test your knowledge. Listen up, class. I want you to close those notebooks because it's time for our active recall pop quiz. Question 1. Who remembers which case protected us from having unconstitutionally obtained evidence used against us in state proceedings, the one that completely changed how local police secure search warrants? If you said Mapp v. Ohio, give yourself a gold star. Dolry Mapp's pushback successfully brought the Fourth Amendment's exclusionary rule straight into state courts. Okay, let's try question 2. Which landmark decision ensures that a lack of financial resources doesn't mean a lack of legal representation, effectively guaranteeing a fair trial for the poor? That's right, it's Gideon v. Wainwright. Clarence Earl Gideon's handwritten petition to the Supreme Court cemented the Sixth Amendment right to counsel for everyone, regardless of the size of their bank account. Section 4. The Law and Order Backlash. The pendulum swings back. Excellent job on the quiz, by the way. Now, let's see how this era builds into a massive political reaction. The Warren Court's huge expansion of civil liberties prompted a very strong conservative response. As crime rates visibly rose during the late 60s and early 70s, many felt these rulings made it way too difficult to enforce the law. They argued the courts had gone soft on crime. So they fiercely advocated for a strict law and order approach, which ultimately helped lay the groundwork for the broader war on drugs. Section 5. The Burger Court Shift, Narrowing the Scope. This huge public demand for tougher enforcement eventually influenced the judicial branch itself under a new Chief Justice, Warren E. Burger. Now notice how the new Burger Court didn't completely overturn the Warren rulings. They didn't just toss out the exclusionary rule entirely, but they did narrow its scope. For example, in the 1984 case United States v. Leon, they created what's called the good faith exception. Basically, if police acted on a search warrant they genuinely believed was valid, the evidence could still be used even if the warrant was later found to be legally defective. Section 6. Balancing Rights and Safety. The ongoing debate. So you might be asking, why do we spend time in class studying court cases from the 1960s? Well, because this fundamental tension between ensuring police have the tools they need to keep us safe and protecting individuals from constitutional overreach, it continues to shape every single aspect of our criminal justice system. The legacy of these rulings and the subsequent law and order reaction literally dictates how police interact with citizens on the street right now. It really is a continuous pendulum swing between liberty and security. I want to leave you with this final thought for today's lesson. As that pendulum continues to swing in our modern society, looking at the complex challenges of policing and the absolute necessity of fair trials, where exactly do you think the line should be drawn today between your civil liberties and public safety? Think about it. Thanks for joining me in this explainer, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Class dismissed.